Welcome to the May 1 meeting of the Mono Basin Historical Society. And I thank everyone for joining us in person. We have a nice crowd out here for the folks that are at home. And just to let you know, like the types of foods that you are missing, we've got great salads, we have pumpkin pie, we have brownies, we have let's see, chile verde, we have enchiladas, and I think lasagna over there. Oh, Dave's showing. That's a show and tell of what we have for our potluck. So thanks everyone for bringing food. So I wanted to thank everyone that returned their trustee ballots and membership renewals and sent donations. And Lenore is going to report to us shortly on what has come in as far as donations and whatnot. But I wanted to let everyone know who our trustees are this year. We have Rich Foy, who is always our man behind the curtain during our meetings, yay. Janice Mendez, Barry McPherson, Chris Spiller, Bob Marks, and Paul McFarland. Paul is our newest board member, and he has a wealth of nonprofit experience to help us with, and so we're really looking forward to working with Paul. Our trustee meeting will be in May, and so after that meeting, I'm sure that in the June meeting, Rich will have a report to give to folks as well. Now that winter has finally seemed like it's left us, the upside down house got de-decorated from Christmas. And that was thanks to Dave and Janet Carl, Nancy Devon, Lenore Toomey, and anyone else that may have been there. Chris was there too. Okay, awesome. You can always count on Chris. Okay, and we've yet to thoroughly go through the museum to see if there was any other damage other than the bell, and so we'll be able to report back on that next month. We've not heard anything from SCE regarding the grant that we normally get every year. The gentleman there, he's new. We used to work with a fellow over in Bakersfield, and now we're working with someone in Bishop. And he said he just can't commit to anything, that it looks like all of their funds they're going to be sending to first responders and for disaster relief this year. So that money we usually use for the operations of the museum. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We'll keep letting you know. He has said that he does feel like he can procure a speaker for us from SCE regarding the pool plant for our ghost tour. So that will be good. We've got the museum planned to be opening Memorial Day weekend, and we have yet to have a museum manager in place. So if you know of anyone that would be interested in a seasonal position that doesn't pay well, but part-time, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be at the museum. It's a lot of fun to meet the folks that are coming in from out of town and work on the exhibits, that sort of thing. Please reach out to us if you know of anyone, or if you would be interested in volunteering at the museum. Frank and I volunteer one day a week, and it's just fun. You meet different people, and we have met people there that we've stayed in touch with, and there's always these great connections with the Mono Basin, and it's really fun to work there. So please keep that in mind. We've got a great program coming up tonight. William Mulholland is in the building, and so. So not yet, but we're going to introduce him after a little bit. I did want to let you folks know that, well, first we want to let Lenore give an update on the funds that have come in since the newsletters and trustee ballots are coming in. Can you come on up? Thank you. And Lenore is our treasurer, in case you folks don't know. And Chris and Lenore moved here, what, about 3 years ago? Two. And I tell you, they are incredible folks. They've just stepped right in and helped us in so many ways both at the museum and personally. So here you go.
Our pleasure,
Thank you.
Robin. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to give a quick update on where we are with this year's fundraising. And we've received private donations of $2,075. Some of these have been additional donations that people have made on top of their membership to help with any needed repairs we're going to need for the museum this year, or additional maintenance as it may crop up. We've had total membership dues, $1,500. So we have a lot of people renewing their memberships, which is really nice. We've received donations in the memory of Penny Kellogg and Alan Blaver. And that's about all there is to report. So far we've had $3,500 come in dues and donations. So, and I'd like to make a plug for donating a day to work in the museum or volunteering a day to work in the museum. The thing that I've found is that everyone who comes in to visit sees something different, and they bring it to your attention, and you learn a little bit of something about everything that is in there. And it's history. I had somebody point out a painting that he'd actually seen a copy of in the British Museum. So people point out things, and the copy that we had come from Bodie. So it was obviously a style at the time that they were copying and bringing in, and people were displaying all over the place. But anybody that has a day to volunteer to work in the museum, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenore. And let's see, you know, a lot happened here during the winter. And for myself personally, Frank and I we left on March 4th. We were planning on coming back, about mid-March. And then Chris Toomey called us on the 13th and said, hey, everything looks great at your house. And we were thinking about coming back. And on the 14th, he said, good news, bad news. Good news is you're not here. Bad news is your patio roof collapsed and you can't get in your door. So we stayed away until last week. And so Dave said that he'd be happy to just sort of give a synopsis of going by the museum while it was full of snow and what it was like here.
So that story, that's the Cassidy story. There is a lot more to it, I'm sure. She didn't tell you about the mice, one that landed on her head when she opened the garage door when she got home. How many of you spent the winter in the local communities? Everybody. No? Almost everybody. How many of you spent the winter in Mammoth? You poor people. You know, those of you who can't, you know, I can do that. I can only see some of the crowd here, but I can do this. Now you're on camera. Yeah. And those of us in Mono City, we actually got some national news coverage about what happened to us in our isolation. International. Duncan King says, where? Ireland? Say that louder. I don't. The Guardian, the British newspaper. Yes. Okay. Yeah, because it was crazy and it was hard, and we are all here. And I'm so glad you are here tonight because this is our first time to really pull off a potluck dinner since before. Well, in a long time, really. The pandemic shut a lot down, but Janet said last October we did have one, but it was pretty small. So I just wanted to say that I've been trying. Once the avalanche road that blocked us opened up, I've been trying to check on the museum. So that's only in the last month. The museum was buried. Not everybody was buried. The museum's bell tower, that cupola that sat up on the front porch, at some point that is a little bit unknown, but was discovered that it was all down, and the bell is sitting over in the fire hall. The firemen came and rescued it so it wouldn't disappear. as people started to return. But returning to the museum was really challenging because, like many places, the plows had created a wall. And so the first thing was to climb an ice wall and get up over, you know, a 4 foot or more ice wall. And then it for a while it was post holing, but after that, you know, if you've been shoveling the snow like we were, you know how the snow conditions changed, and they changed with the layers. And anyway, we were able to walk on top of this deep snow to get towards the museum. And then we get to the doors, and I wanted to get inside. Our race communication, like many people's race communication, went down. And that was important because it's part of our satellite, our security system. So I had to dig out the side door, and we had a screen door, which was now gone. And I think it was a mistake because it opened out. And then we had the side door itself, which opened in, which that was good. So I was able to do that. And I got into the museum on the door. I was able to get in a couple times, and then it started to warm up, and it got wetter and warmer. And the next time I came back, the door wouldn't open. I finally kicked it in. I didn't break anything, but I had to, you know, work. It's swollen. I have one of those in my garage that did the same thing. It wasn't because the pressure of the snow on the roof was causing the building to buckle. Thank goodness it was just swollen, because now that things have dried out some, it's back to working. So anyway, we got inside, and I'll wrap this up because it's just about time for our program. I got inside, and then I had to get a hammer and a board and hammer from the inside to get the door back into the closed position and locked. And then I was in there. Happily, we have another door, the back door, and it was working. And I got out, and that was that. But for just a moment, I kind of had myself going, I may be in here. They'll find me like one of the horses that died of winter exposure. They'll find me in the museum in the spring. So anyway, we all have stories, and I'm sure many of you have better stories than I have. But congratulations on making it through the winter of 2023. And 40 years ago, we lived through 82, 83. It's the last time it was rather close to these conditions. So 40 years from now, we'll gather again and talk about the stories of another big winter, I hope. So here you go, Robin.
Thanks, Dave. Absolutely. No, you come up right now. So Janet's going to make a quick announcement.
So hi everyone, I'm Janet, Dave's wife, and I just wanted everyone to know that we have an exciting June coming up in the Mono Basin. We're doing Mono Lake volunteer training the first Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So if anybody's interested in getting to know the basin better and joining us as a volunteer, we only ask for 8 hours a month, and it's really a lot of fun. And several of you in the audience are Mono Lake volunteers. And then we have a really exciting project to paint some murals in town, celebrating the connection between the Americas that the little bird, the phalarope, provides, little migratory bird that comes here mainly in middle of the summer, after the breeding grounds, up from the breeding grounds up north. So there's going to be a couple of murals in town. An artist is coming from Argentina, from our sister lake down at Mar Chiquita, to paint. So we're going to unveil them at the Phalarope, the first ever Phalarope Festival, on Father's Day, June 18th. It's kind of the final thing of the Mono Basin Bird Festival, or Chautauqua. But you don't have to sign up, you don't have to register, it's free. There's going to be a bunch of Argentinians and some people from Great Salt Lake. We're going to unveil the murals, have a bird calling contest, have dancing, and a brand new Phalarope song, world debut. So it's going to be really fun, and I want everybody to come because we have to have a good crowd for the Argentinians. So that will be at noon, from noon to 4 on Father's Day, June 18th. And you'll see posters around town soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Janet. That sounds fun. Okay, are we looking good on Zoom?
I'm going to tell Sally to try again.
Okay. 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 Okay, folks. So our presentation tonight is a living history. David and Gail Woodruff are the authors of Tales Along the El Camino Sierra book series that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and this is going to be, we're going to have a visit with William Mulholland. There it is. Take it. So I'm going to hand this over to Gail. Or, okay.
Testing. Okay. Whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting over. Those were the words of the legendary Mark Twain. And perhaps nowhere was water fought over with more zeal and emotion than in the magnificent eastern Sierra Nevada. The water wars of the Owens Valley and Mono Lake have helped shape the politics of water on a historic level. And undoubtedly, one person has had a far greater impact on water and how we view it than any other. Please roll back your calendars to February 1928 and join me today in welcoming the father of the Los Angeles Aqueduct, William Mulholland.
The aqueduct is complete and it is good. No one knows better than I how much we needed the water. We have the fertile lands and the climate, and only water was needed. And now we have it. We dedicate to you and your posterity forever a magnificent body of water.
Then the gates were opened, and the mountain water brought 233 miles from the Owens Valley flowed spectacularly down the stair step called the Cascades. As the 50,000 Angelinos in attendance roared their approval, Mulholland bellowed.
There it is.
There it is.
Take it.
Take it.
So I was born in Ireland in 1855. Unfortunately, my mother passed away when I was just 7. And my father, he was an angry and violent man. And he took his anger out on me and my brother quite often. So by the time I was 15, I'd had enough. And I joined the British Merchant Navy. For the next 4 years, I made 19 trips across the Atlantic. But finally, wanting to get some sea legs, around 1874, I departed in New York and I made my way to Michigan, where I became a lumberjack in the wintertime and I worked on a Great Lakes freighter in the summer. But logging is a pretty dangerous business, and I just about lost a leg in a logging accident. So I figured I'd heard a lot about California, the Golden State it was called, and I thought I should make my way there and see what fortune I might find. I stowed away on a steamer in New York that was headed to California. Unfortunately, I was caught by the time we got to the Panama Isthmus, which required me to walk the 47 miles across the jungle, where I was able to work a bit, save a few dollars, and buy passage on up to Los Angeles, where I arrived in 1877. At that time, Los Angeles was a rough and tumble town. It primarily got its start providing cattle and other supplies for mining camps throughout Southern California and other nearby areas. It was said that it may well be the most lawless town in the United States between 1850 and 1870, with a murder rate 20 times the national average. But the weather, oh, the weather. 275 days of glorious sunshine. Even during December and January, the high was near 70 degrees. But there is a downside to all that sunshine. The Los Angeles area gets less than 15 inches of precipitation a year, making it a semi-arid climate. It was still a fairly small town in 1877, just about 9,000 people. But all that would soon change over the next several years. Despite my falling in love with Los Angeles, it didn't seem to fall in love with me because I couldn't find work. And I was actually headed back to the docks in San Pedro, where I hoped to find work on a ship when I was planning to depart. But on my way there, I was recruited to come and dig a ditch and a well for a private man. I was young and fit, and I had no challenge with that kind of work. In fact, I found the movement of shovel, lift, and toss actually cathartic. And soon enough, after that, I was able to secure employment with the privately held Los Angeles Water Company, as a ditch digger at first, as a laborer, and I was able to work my way up fairly quickly. And soon on, I became friends with with the manager of the water company, a man by the name of Fred Eaton. Now, Eaton was one of the founding and wealthiest families from the Pasadena area. He was also a civil engineer, and he was impressed by my hard work. And we became much more than just employer and employee very quickly. In fact, Fred Eaton and I became very good friends, a friendship that lasted well into the 19-teens. Fred was ambitious, and he left the water department about 1886. First, he became a surveyor for the city of Los Angeles. Then he became a civil engineer for them as well. In fact, the sewer system that Los Angeles has today was the nucleus of what Fred Eaton built back in the 1890s. And of course, Fred also for a while ran the private Los Angeles Railroad Department. In fact, he designed one of the first electric streetcar systems of any urban city in the United States. And as you may all know, in 1898, Fred ran and was elected mayor of Los Angeles. And when Fred left the water department in 1886, well, I had worked my way up enough to where I was hired to be the superintendent of the privately held Los Angeles Water Company, a position that I held for the next 16 years. Once I became promoted, I was hell-bent on making sure I could do the best job possible. There was nary a book on engineering, hydrology, or geology at the Los Angeles Library that I didn't read. I immersed myself in those subjects and worked really hard to make that water company successful. Oh, I did take time out in 1890 to marry probably what was the best thing that ever happened to me in life, my delightful wife, Lily Ferguson. By 1890, the city of Los Angeles' population had swollen to 55,000 people. It increased fivefold in the previous 10 years. And by 1900, the population had now doubled to over 100,000 people. Fred Eaton, when he ran for mayor in 1898, he ran on a platform of turning over the privately held Los Angeles Water Company to a municipal one, owned and run by the city of Los Angeles. Well, an approving vote by the populace, followed by a successful bond measure, the city took control of its own water, and I became the Los Angeles Municipal Water Company's first superintendent. It was trying times, but good times. The water for the city of Los Angeles came primarily from the Los Angeles River, a rather dismal river that in the summer and early fall probably resembles more of a slough than a river. Oh, we had a few wells that augmented our water system, but by my computations, at the best, the water sources in Los Angeles couldn't support a town of greater than 300,000 people. I felt the city of Los Angeles could grow without limits if it had enough water, and probably become one of the greatest cities in the world. I had talked to Fred Eaton numerous times about the fact if the city was going to continue to grow, we needed to find additional water sources. I looked to the east. The San Gabriel, San Ana rivers came out of the mountains there. They weren't much bigger than the Los Angeles River, and the bordering communities were already starting to develop them. Eaton, who I had had conversation for years about the need for more water, had told me that he had vacationed in this area over 200 miles north and east of Los Angeles. For years, he had gone there as a child. He said it was a great mountain desert valley with abundant water. And he thought that might be the solution for a good water source for our city. Fred liked to tell me on one of his vacations, he and his daughter hiked to the top of Mount Whitney, the tallest mountain in the 48 states. And he observed the surrounding town and the scenery, and he could tell, so he thought, that from the Owens Valley, as it was called, all the way to Los Angeles was downhill. And water could probably be made to get there without the use of a pump. Eaton took me on a trip in the summer of 1904 to the Owens Valley in a buckboard wagon to take a look for myself. When we arrived, there was abundant water flowing out of the mountains, snow-capped still even in the late summer, flowing into the Owens River, which in turn flowed south into Owens Lake, a dismal, dreary, dead lake that served no purpose. Oh, there were maybe 100 or 200 farmers that used some of the water for irrigation, but for the most part, we thought it was there for the taking. We went back. Over the next 4 months, I made 5 more trips to the Owens Valley, where I surveyed every crevice, every canyon, every ridge, and I came to the conclusion that Fred Eaton was probably right. We could build a system that would take the water from the Owens Valley over 200 miles to Los Angeles. The flow was abundant. It would provide water forever, so we thought. Eaton and I went back to the city of Los Angeles, some of the water department officials and the mayor and others, and we told them that we had discovered the solution to Los Angeles's water problem. They were very excited. Eaton had volunteered to be the agent for the city of Los Angeles and go and start acquiring land with water rights. The city mayor and the water department officials, they urged us to move forward and to aggressively attain whatever water rights we could there, sufficient to provide water for an aqueduct that we might build. We all agreed that silence was important. If those farmers and ranchers in the Owens Valley learned that there was a large municipality after their property, well, that would do nothing but drive the prices up and cost the water payers in Los Angeles a substantial amount more. Now, on Eaton's trip with me that previous summer, he had told me a little bit more about the water situation in the Owens Valley. The federal government had recently created a new department called the Bureau of Reclamation. Oh, they were a bunch of high-priced, college-educated engineers that went around the country looking for places to build a dam and other irrigation projects and water the dry desert so people could grow crops. The person that they sent out to the Owens Valley as their representative to study the situation, because that was one of the first projects that they thought they might get involved in, was irrigating the lands in the Owens Valley much beyond what they already were, with a great project the federal government might build. Their representative was Joseph Lippincott. Lippincott, he was also friends with Fred. We also hired him at the water department as a private consultant from time to time as well. And yes, Lippincott was able to provide us a good deal of information. In the spring of 1905, Eaton went out and he aggressively started to purchase up what land he could in the Owens Valley with water rights. Many people, knowing of Lippincott's association with Eaton and Lippincott's representative of the Bureau of Reclamation, well, they mistakenly thought that perhaps Eaton was buying up property as part of this Bureau of Reclamation project, which was a thought that we found no need to dispel among those that thought so. Well, by the summer of 1905, Eaton called me. He had acquired 40 miles of Owens River, 50,000 acres of land, not all in the Owens Valley. He also acquired land and right down to the south here in Long Valley as well. Most of this was through one single purchase with a large landowner named Thomas Rickey. We had the water, now we had to bring it to Los Angeles. We went back, the city officials were elated, and we made the announcement to the public that the solution to Los Angeles's water shortage, of its inability to grow much larger because of the lack of water, would be solved. Even Teddy Roosevelt, the President of the United States, said it was far more important to bring the water so the city of Los Angeles could grow than to satisfy the interest of a few hundred farmers in the Owens Valley. The people of Los Angeles were elated. They passed the bond measure. Eaton held the options on the property, and soon the property became most of the property, under the ownership of the city of Los Angeles. And now the work would begin. But before we could do any real work to actually build this aqueduct, we had to lay out the groundwork for it. We had to lay miles of telephone lines, build more roads, be able to have more power and electricity to run the project with. Heck, I even was able to convince the Southern Pacific Railroad to build a line from Southern California to Lone Pine to bring in supplies to the aqueduct, but it would also provide low-cost transportation to the residents of the Owens Valley as well. It was a grand project, 233 miles without the use of pumps. We were going to bring the water over rough and very difficult terrain. 143 tunnels, a total of 42 miles worth. Probably our greatest engineering achievement, 23 siphons, totaling 12 miles in length combined, that lifted water on the way from the Owens Valley to Los Angeles, almost 5,000 feet total. My men, working on the Elizabeth Tunnel, which was down past Lancaster in the Mojave Desert, it was 5.5 miles long. And during the construction, they set the record for hard rock tunneling, 604 feet in just 30 days. We saved enormous amounts of money by using local tufa stone that we ground and turned into cement. We built small hydroelectric projects that provided electricity so that we could run barges and dredges to dig part of the ditches in the Owens Valley. I worked with the CL Best Tractor Company, and we made one of the first Caterpillar tractors in existence that came and helped us build that aqueduct. And my men We employed nearly 6,000 people at its zenith during the construction of the aqueduct. We started one of the first healthcare systems in the nation for my men, 50 cents a month, and they were covered for any injuries that they might suffer on the job. I regret the loss of any life, but on such a great project, we only lost 43 men during the construction. It was a grand and glorious project. And on November 5th, 2013, the aqueduct was complete. The water had been brought 233 miles from the gates at Aberdeen, north of Independence, and delivered to a place called the Cascades. The water flowed magnificently right there to the edge of the San Fernando Valley.
You mean water was taken from the Owens Valley and brought to the doorstep of a few wealthy Angelenos who had purchased cheap land they knew would skyrocket in value. William Randolph Hearst, Los Angeles Herald-Examiner.
Oh yes, the San Fernando Valley. Another issue I had to deal with. Some smart and good businessmen from Southern California, Harrison Otis, the owner and publisher of the Los Angeles Times, his son, Harry Chandler, who was the editor of the newspaper, Henry Huntington, that was the president of the Los Angeles streetcar system at the time, Moses Sherman, real estate developer, and, oh yeah, a Los Angeles Water Bureau director. They had the good sense to buy land, large quantities of it in the Owens Valley. In the San Fernando Valley. Some people claimed that they were able to take advantage of inside information. Well, somebody has to own the land somewhere, and these men happen to own the land in the San Fernando Valley. And soon enough, after the aqueduct was completed, within a year, there was a vote held, and the unincorporated land in the San Fernando Valley became part of the city of Los Angeles. It tripled the size of the city, and aqueduct water was delivered. The combination of the fertile soils of the San Fernando Valley with the beautiful climate and irrigated water brought 233 miles away led Los Angeles County to become an agricultural paradise. In fact, Los Angeles County is the largest producing agricultural county in the country still to this day. 50,000 carloads of oranges were shipped just last year, some of them all the way to England. They grow pumpkins and celery and wheat and olives and all number of crops in the San Fernando Valley, making it be incredibly successful. In 1914, to show you the promise of Los Angeles to the nation, Henry Ford, the brilliant auto industrialist, he chose to build a Model T plant in Los Angeles because he could see with the growth coming that his cars would do nothing but increase more in sales. That was followed by B.F. Goodrich, Goodyear, Firestone. They all came to make tires. The forerunners of Boeing, Lockheed, and Douglas all showed up in Southern California to build factories. In 1915, a gentleman by the name of D.W. Griffith, out there in those hills in Hollywood land above downtown Los Angeles, he filmed one of the first full-length feature movies, engendering an industry that is almost synonymous with Los Angeles today. Yes, indeed. Los Angeles, just as I had predicted, was growing into be one of the great cities of the country. I love it when I'm right, which is fortunate because I so often am. In 1920, the city's population now had become 575,000 people. We were the 10th largest city in the United States. And we were using every bit of water the aqueduct could deliver. This period coincided with a drought cycle that had hit California. In fact, in 1922, the snowpack in the Sierras was so light that the water delivered through the aqueduct to the city was only about 40% what it was when the aqueduct had opened 9 years previous. It was clear we were now going to have to seek even more water. Well, I was able to institute a survey of the practicality of possibly bringing water from the Colorado River to Los Angeles and all of Southern California someday. I also wanted to build a 150-foot tall dam at the mouth of Long Valley here to the south. That would act as a storage reservoir, store water that would be used up later in the year and help solve some of our problems as well. But for an immediate solution, we were going to have to turn and start to acquire water rights in the Owens Valley in the well-watered Big Pine and Bishop area. Most of the land Eaton had purchased back in 1905 was to the south in Independence and Lone Pine. There was plenty of water in Bishop and in the Big Pine area. The Owens Valley, during this time, had a group formed called the Owens Valley Protective Association. Oh, it was made up of irrigation ditch owners and business owners and a few farmers and ranchers to represent their interests, so I was told, in the Owens Valley. And their troublemaking president was Wilfred Watterson, who, along with his brother Mark, were the owners and chief officers of the Inyo National Bank, which was about the only bank and financial institution in the Owens Valley. The two brothers virtually controlled the finances of Inyo County. Well, I started work in 1923 early to build a 100-foot dam there at Owens Valley, at the mouth of Long Valley. And the reason I was only going to build a 100-foot dam is because Fred Eaton, he owned still Long Valley, thousands of acres there. If we were to build a 150-foot tall dam, it would back a reservoir all the way into Eaton's property, requiring the city to have to purchase it. Eaton said he wanted $1 million for the Long Valley property. By my calculations, back in 1905, he hadn't paid more than $200,000. I told Eaton I would buy Long Valley 3 years after he was dead. I would not allow the city ratepayers to be held hostage to such extortion prices. So by building a 100-foot tall dam, it wouldn't back water up into Eaton's. It wasn't the size I wanted, but it would at least help be a solution for the problem for the time being. We started construction, and the Owens Valley Protective Association, they immediately filed an injunction for us to stop building the dam. But they let it be known, and by the way, Fred Eaton was also a member of the Owens Valley Protective Association. They let it be known that they would drop their injunction if we built a 150-foot tall dam. I told Watterson and Eaton and the rest, good luck with your injunction, boys. And I turned my attention back to buying land with water rights in the Big Pine and Bishop area. Some people say I go out of my way to aggravate them. Trust me, I don't go out of my way at all. We immediately were able to secure rights and purchase for $1 million the McNally Ditch, one of the most southern of the irrigation ditches that ran off of the Owens Valley. It actually went to the east side of the valley and further south all the way down towards Independence. Cost us $1 million, but it certainly had a great deal of water to go along with it. But right up above the diversion gates for the McNally Ditch, where we were to take our water, the Big Pine irrigation ditch had their gates. And once they learned we had purchased the property, those SOB Bishop ranchers opened up their irrigation gates and diverted almost the entire flow into their project, so that there was virtually no water that we had purchased to put into our aqueduct. I sent some of my men up there because we were able to build a rather straight line and divert the water from the river around the Big Pine gates direct to the McNally Ditch. But no sooner were my men on the job than a few ranchers and farmers from Big Pine showed up with their rifles. They told my men to leave, and the Los Angeles' water department equipment ended up in the bottom of the Owens River. Shortly after this became a time when the lawlessness in the Eastern Sierras really got underway. We had an Owens Valley resident who acted as the city's agent, lived in Bishop, Lester Hall. He was trying to enjoy dinner in a cafe in Bishop, and a group of men came into the cafe. They immediately corralled Lester and escorted him out to a car. They pushed him down in the back seat of their car, and they headed out into the middle of the desert valley. Hall could see on the floor there was a rope that had been neatly tied into a noose. The men now numbered about 20. They drove out to a tall cottonwood tree there east of Big Pine, strong and sturdy with a lateral branch. They threw the rope over the branch, and they put the noose around Hall's neck. It was only by Hall being able to flash the sign of distress of the Freemasons, that two in the party happened to be, that Hall's life was saved. But the men told him they weren't happy with what he was doing on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, and they told him he better be on the next southbound train the next morning, or he could expect further situations. Law and order in the Owens Valley, right. Sheriff Collins of Inyo County, despite the fact that Hall could identify virtually every person in that party, the only thing the good sheriff could do was escort Hall to the train the next day. I had the men redouble our efforts. We started making offers to those Big Pine irrigation ditch folks, and by October 1923, we had acquired most of the Big Pine irrigation district for another $1 million. We paid them $250 an acre on average, about the same amount of money that valuable agricultural land was going for in the San Fernando Valley. The ranchers and farmers made out. We always paid more, much more, than the appraised value of people's lands. And during all this and into the future, no one was ever denied their historical rights to water, no matter what you may hear otherwise. Spring of 1924, an article appeared in the San Francisco Call newspaper, one of those liberal left-wing periodicals. It was written by a man by the name of Court Kuntz, called The Tragedy of the Owens Valley was the title of the article. Kuntz, he happened to be married to one of the Watterson brothers. He was his sisters. Among other things, he called for the construction of a 150-foot tall dam. But he dragged the reputation of me and my city through the mud. And that article was reprinted in papers across the country. People's opinion of the city of Los Angeles and myself had now taken a pretty negative turn. The newspaper called me the king of the home destroyers. I have destroyed no one. Everyone that has sold their property to me and the city has done so willingly and got it for much more than the land was worth. The article went on to say that the city was hell-bent on obtaining every bit of water in the Owens Valley. Well, people's land can be purchased, but there is an inherent conflict between the life of the aqueduct, which is the life of my city, and the agricultural interest of a few hundred farmers in the Owens Valley. I don't know if it was because of that article in the San Francisco Call or not, but shortly after, the first dynamiting of the Los Angeles aqueduct took place, just a little bit north of Lone Pine. The men that came out and did it blasted about a 100-foot section away. Oh, the local newspaper said it was an act of desperate farmers and ranchers. Well, let me tell you, the real emotion in the valley was not desperation, but greed. The real grievance in the valley was not what we had bought, but what we had declined to buy. And the real fear was not that we would buy more land, but that we would go towards the Colorado River to acquire additional water rights.
We know if you take away the water from the land you have already bought and give us nothing in return, we are ruined. We expect a square deal from the city of Los Angeles, and we believe we are going to get it. George Warren, president of the Big Pine Civic Club.
Now, Warren's talking about reparations demands. They claimed that with the exodus of lots of farmers and ranchers that had given up trying to eke out an existence in the Owens Valley and accepted our generous offers to buy their land with water, that somehow the businesses had suffered and that they now needed reparations. Some in the valley, selfish, greedy people trying to take advantage of a municipality hundreds of miles away, thought we should now buy all the remaining land in the Owens Valley and call it good.
Our property values have diminished to the vanishing point insofar as any purchaser except the city of Los Angeles is concerned, and outside capital is no longer available. Renewal of mortgages is no longer possible. The Federal Land Bank refuses to grant any further loans. Fire insurance companies have withdrawn from the field. Our rural population is decreasing. Farms are disappearing. Schools have closed. And some of our best citizens have forsaken the valley on account of the problematic future. Williford Watterson, president of the Inyo Bank and the Owens Valley Protective Association.
I told Watterson the people of the Owens Valley were entitled to justice, and justice they shall have. But when Watterson and the others submitted their offer for the city of Los Angeles to buy virtually all the remaining agricultural and residential and private commercial land that remained in the valley, well, they wanted $8 million, along with $200,000 of reparations. Most of the land didn't even have water. I wasn't abandoning the commitment to justice that I had sworn to earlier, but I would not let my city of Los Angeles ratepayers be held hostage to such greed by a few people in the Owens Valley. Well, November 15th, 1924, in the darkness of the early morning light, about 20 cars with about 60 men drove down El Camino Sierra from the Big Pine and Bishop areas down to a place called the Alabama Gates. It's north of Lone Pine. It's a place that I had engineered into the aqueduct, the concrete lined part, that would allow us to release water from the aqueduct should spring runoff be too great and overflow the aqueduct. The runoff would go down into the old dry Owens River bed and be harmless. Well, when the 60 men arrived with guns, they told the Los Angeles people that were watching, the guards that were watching over the Alabama Gates, that their services were no longer needed. They cut the locks on the gates, they opened them wide open, and every drop of water from the Los Angeles aqueduct, which was meant to head south to the city, flowed down a channel and back into the dry and barren desert.
By the third day, almost 1,000 people had gathered in support of the occupiers. Women prepared meals, children sang cheery songs, and a general atmosphere of festiveness prevailed. Willie Chalifant, editor in your register.
Festiveness indeed. 50 million gallons of water, 5 million gallons of water every hour that was meant for my city pouring out into the dry desert. When I heard that the aqueduct had been occupied by farmers and ranchers of the Owens Valley, the mayor and I of Los Angeles put together about 200 police officers and cars, sent them up across the Mojave Desert to get our aqueduct back. Well, Governor Friend Richardson heard that we were sending our men there. He called the mayor and asked him to please call them off. He was concerned of bloodshed. He said he would do what he could to take care of it. Inyo County Sheriff Collins, he tells the men that they need to leave during an illegal situation. They didn't. Sheriff Collins sat down and enjoyed a meal with him. The governor sent his chief engineer for the state, Mr. McClure, down to see what could be done. McClure was seen within an hour after he arrived with a heaping plate of barbecue. On the fourth day, a group of bankers and businessmen from Los Angeles, they were in touch with Watterson's, and they told them that they would act as the mediators for future concerns that the Owens Valley residents would have with the city. Seems like that's all the occupiers cared about, was the publicity that they got. They closed the gates, they went home, and the water returned flowing south. In the spring of 1925, just a few months later, the California State Legislature passed a bill that would allow residents of the Owens Valley to sue the city of Los Angeles if they could prove that somehow we had damaged their business and economy. Pay reparations. Within weeks after the bill was passed, $2.8 million of reparation claims came across my desk. Barbers, doctors, beauticians, dentists, laborers. I think every occupation in the Owens Valley was represented, trying to get the city of Los Angeles to pay them some kind of unfounded reparations.
The city of Los Angeles took no action on any of the claims. It appeared their intention was to continue with their piecemeal acquisitions, pitting neighbor against neighbor and fostering bad blood and ill feelings at every opportunity. Carl Keogh, Owens Valley businessman.
We continued piecemeal purchases of those people that would sell us the land. The reparation claims were ridiculous. They were far too excessive, and it was much better for the city to continue with those claims, to continue with purchases of individual lands. It was a terrible time. I'm sorry.
The ownership, 80%.
So we continued our purchases. We pushed our land that we owned in the city up to about 80% of all the agricultural land that existed in the Owens Valley. There were claims that we had ruined their economy. Shipping costs with the railroad were up. Bank deposits were up. Business construction loans were up. Far from it was the city ruining the Owens Valley. I personally think that perhaps there were private power companies behind instigating the problems with the Owens Valley residents.
April 27, 1926, the California State Senate tabled the reparations legislation, leaving the people of the Owens Valley with no recourse. They must take satisfactory measures into their own hands. Harry Glasscock, editor, Owens Valley Herald.
And what were those satisfactory measures? The dynamiting resumed. From 1924 to 1927, no fewer than 20 separate acts of dynamiting violence took place against our aqueduct. I would not tolerate that destruction of my pride and joy and the city of Los Angeles's money as taxpayers and ratepayers.
The city of Los Angeles sent up armed men and machine guns with orders to shoot and kill anyone that approached their aqueduct. They set up a roadblock south of Atlanta where every northbound car was stopped, questioned, and sometimes searched. They quite literally placed the Eastern Sierra under a state of martial law. Carl Keogh, Owens Valley businessman.
Those residents in the Owens Valley, they quite literally put it under a state of war. I half regretted the demise of so many of the valley's orchards, as there now were no longer enough trees to hang all those troublemakers. In the summer of 1927, rumors had been circulating for weeks. And bank examiners from the state capital in Sacramento, state of California, they showed up on the Watterson brothers' doors to conduct an audit. Within 3 days, they figured there was at least a $500,000 shortage from what their books claimed to be. And they made the Watterson brothers close their banks as they conducted further investigation. When the Watterson banks were closed, they put up a sign on the door telling their depositors and customers that they could get their money once the city of Los Angeles paid their reparations. Astounding! What does the reparations business have to do with the financial health of the Watterson brothers' banks? As of 1926, we have made about $12 million in land purchases in the Owens Valley, and most of the mortgages on the properties were held by the Watterson brothers' banks. And in every case, the owner of the farm or ranch received far more for the land than the mortgage was. The Watterson brothers simply took the money that these ranchers and farmers sold their land for and used it on their own behalf and left their friends and neighbors on the hook for those mortgages and other loans that they thought had been paid off. We had nothing to do with their bad finances. In fact, by the Watterson brothers' own admission, they had taken the money and spent it on their businesses that they operated in the Owens Valley beyond the banks that they happened to own. A fact that was concluded by the bank examiners. Well, the Watterson brothers were charged with 36 counts of embezzlement. And they were tried and taken to court. They were given a 10-year sentence, and now they're serving time in San Quentin Penitentiary.
The discovery of the Wattersons' irregularities dealt the people of Owens Valley a terrific blow. The collapse of their banks has wiped out the lifetime savings of many people in the Owens Valley. When the guilty verdict was read at the courthouse in Independence, many in the courtroom sobbed, including some of the jury, the prosecuting attorney, even the judge was seen dabbing his moist eyes. Willie Chalifant, editor in your Register.
It is my sincere, though probably forlorn hope, that those residents of the Owens Valley somehow will be able to someday reclaim their deposits. But with the Watterson brothers in prison, there is no longer organized opposition to Los Angeles's rightful and justful right to the Owens Valley River. And now here in February of 1928, the future of water for my great city looks very bright. The magnificent St. Francis Dam, a huge storage project, is now refilling for its second water season. We are making plans to divert most of the water that feeds Mono Lake, a dead and worthless saline poisoned inland sea. We'll build an 11-mile tunnel under volcanic mountains and deliver the water to Long Valley, which someday I will build my 150-foot tall dam. Oh, I'm sure my Mono Lake project is not going to suit some people very well, but I don't get paid to be nice. I get paid to be right. Some people claim I have ruined Owens Valley and treated the people very unfairly. Well, I have brought a great mountain river so the city of Los Angeles could grow. Just in the last 8 years, the population has doubled again. Los Angeles indeed may become the greatest city in the world. It is true, my reputation among the people in the Owens Valley is not of the highest regard. But I have always been on the square, and I have no regrets for anything that I have done. We employ scores of people in the Owens Valley, provide them with cheap electricity. We pay a huge portion of the tax rolls there in Inyo County. The county wouldn't even survive if it weren't for the money they derive from us. We have hundreds of thousands of acres of beautiful open space that we allow recreation for people to enjoy and will for perpetuity. I believe with all my heart that the greatest good for the greatest number is the true measure of right and wrong. Fortune favors the bold. And bold, the city of Los Angeles and I have been. Probably against my better judgment, I'll take your questions and comments. Well, sit down. Just pay your water bill on time. That's all. Yes, sir. Yes.
If we do it on the microphone, I'll come up there.
Oh, here you go.
Okay, but I'll come up there. Mr. Mulholland,
Yes.
allow me to introduce myself. I am J.S. Kane. And let's take you back to October 1923. I should let you know that by then, for the last 10 years, I and my companies have managed to buy up 80% of the land in the Mono Basin, and we now control 99% of the water rights. And I've directed my consultant, Walter Huber, to interact with your lawyer in San Francisco, Frederick Fowler, and we have worked up an offer to sell you, that is, to sell the city of Los Angeles in October of 1923, all of the land and water rights that we now own in the Mono Basin for a mere $5.5 million. We also have plans on how to get the water out of here, to get it into the Owens River. But you and your arrogance, about what you can accomplish, you have turned your back on this offer. And in January of 1924, you walked away from it and you said, we're going to turn our attention to the Owens Valley and we're going to screw all those people there. We're going to get their water, and if it leads to a war it is. And you've got the power of Los Angeles behind you, and you took it and you did what you'd had to do. But you still did not have the water that you needed. Where's the water you needed? We're sitting on the banks of Mono Lake right now. This is where you needed your water from. And in 2 lawsuits, do you know who has absolute rights to all water in the Mono Basin? Me. 1914, we got the rights to the water rights in Rush Creek. And then in 1920, we got the rights to protect ourselves against you and the city of Los Angeles by a court, federal court, that said, you cannot condemn our properties because we have a power company, a public utility. Southern Sierra's power company. You have a utility as well. The district court says you can't condemn our properties. You cannot take what we have here. We, that is me, J.S. Kane, we've got it all. If you want the water from Mono Lake going into Mono Lake, you're going to have to buy it from me. You turn your back on me once, you're going to come groveling back. And you know what you do in 1929? You come groveling back. And we make an offer to sell you all of that land and water that we have for a mere $7.5 million. And do you know what you do? You take the deal. It's consummated in 1933. All yours. I'm dead by then, by the way. I died in 1930. I'm actually Bob Marks. I'm a historian. I have an article coming out in the Southern California Quarterly called Before Mulholland, Land, Water, and Power in the Mono Basin, 1872 to 1923. That tells the whole story.
So let me step out of character then. So I thought they condemned a huge amount of the land in the Mono Basin when they finally came up here in the 1930s. Okay.
This company is there. Actually, it was 4 companies in particular. But the main one was the Southern Sierras Power Company, because it was protected against the city of Los Angeles's right to condemn any properties up here. And that was a very interesting case that dealt with a power plant in the Owens Gorge. Interesting case. So Kane outsmarted Los Angeles and protected all the rights to land and water up here. Los Angeles could not condemn any of their rights. And there's an interesting story about how Kane came to own and control all the land and water in the Mono Basin as well. I'll send you. It's coming out in the article's coming out in the summer issue. I'll send it to anybody who wants it.
Interesting to hear from a couple of watermongers, isn't it? Any more questions in the room? Okay. Oh, hang on. Just a second, Stan. I'll bring it to you.
I am not part of the Kane family, no. David, I don't know if it's part of your presentation or you can share, but Mr. Mulholland became under attack later politically, fell from grace, if you will, and kind of went downhill from there. Whether it was politics, whether it was the economics of acquisitions of land and the water and so on. Do you have time to touch on that? Would the audience like to hear any of that?
I purposely ended the program in February of 1928 because as Mulholland, I didn't want to talk about the St. Francis Dam other than its glory, that it was such a great project. Within a month, or about a month later, March 1928, the St. Francis Dam collapses. One of the largest dams our gravity arch dams that was built at that time. If you don't know where it's at, if you drive the 14 from Lancaster down to Santa Clarita there, it's kind of the next canyon to the north, more or less, that parallels Highway 14, the Antelope Valley Freeway there. It was the largest man-made disaster as far as loss of life in California. At least 600 people had perished, at least. There were lots of migrant farm workers that had no documentation or real records, so the number was probably much greater. A lot of the people that lost their lives were of the construction project, both for the city of LA that was downstream and Southern California Edison as well. That really threw Mulholland into disgrace. So he was now responsible for the loss of 600 people's lives. His dam caretaker noticed, it was the second water season, it was refilling. And Horfenschneiger, David, help me out here, the caretaker at St. Francis. Okay, he saw the water was leaking out of the dam greater than it had been. All dams leak, but all of a sudden the leak became much greater. And Mulholland and his assistant, Van Norman, went out there that day, looked around and said, no, the dam is fine. And it collapsed that night. And again, at least 600 people lost their lives. I do a slideshow program on it. I find it a real interesting thing. Millions of dollars of loss of property on top of all the lives. Guess how many lawsuits were filed against the city? None. 0. It is a different time, and the city did go out and immediately tried to do what they could to help compensate people and take care of them. And there was a huge community effort between the Boy Scouts and the AAA and police departments from all over the state of California. But it was a terrible, terrible tragedy. And and he wasn't charged criminally, but he had to go to a coronary inquest. And there's an awful picture of him on the witness stand, looking about as glum as anybody I've ever seen. And I think that was when he said infamously, at a time like this, I envy the dead. He was pretty beat up, and he retired very quickly after that. According to his daughter and granddaughter, didn't have much of a zeal for life. And I think he passed away, correct me if anybody knows, I think it was 1934 he ended up passing away. But terrible end to a man that was revered in Los Angeles as a god at the time.
David, thank you so much. As usual, your programs are incredible. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much for attending. And I always do a commercial. Thank you very much to the Mono Basin Historical Society for what you do.
Well, thank you.
Keeping history relevant here. These local organizations that do this with virtually no money and lots of volunteer efforts and donations and memberships, the job that they do is just incredible, and especially here at the Mono Basin. I have some if anybody wants them. But I want to also say that if you really want to know more about water politics in the Eastern Sierras, this gentleman's books, if you don't already have them, are the ones that you really want. His research, I give a fun show with a lot of drama. The research, the tedious work that people like David, Carl, and Janet do on these issues is just astronomical, and thank you for what you do with that.
Thank you. I want to tell you that in the chat, we have Jeff Tennyson zooming in from Mexico.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you very much for watching the program. You're one of our best supporters and good friend. Thank you very much for that.
That is awesome. And we've got a lot of wonderful comments in the chat about what a great presentation this is. Thank you, so very much. Thank you. Oh, great. Wonderful. Okay. Well, the table, yes.
Just one last comment. I just, I've heard so much about Mulholland for so long, and he's kind of a boogeyman in the Eastern Sierra, but I thought Dave did such a good job of bringing his perspective to life. And so thank you for that, because it made me kind of see things in a different light, which I think is what you were going for. Yeah.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, before we close tonight, I wanted to thank everyone that came in today. And there is a sign-in tablet going around. If you could sign in, and if you are not members, unfortunately, I did not bring anything tonight. But please feel free. Please, we would love to have you as members. We have great programs every month. And thanks to Dave Carl, who usually sets them up for us. And I wanted to tell you about next month's. It sounds like a real fun one. This is a gentleman that wrote a book called Justice for All, The Search for Big Poker Tom, a historical novel. And just to give you a little bit, he says that the stories behind the story. With the author Wayne Purcell, he's going to be our June 5th program. Tom relates the bizarre and almost unbelievably dramatic story of what took place in the spring of 1891, when Bridgeport and his residents, just a few miles north of us, were in danger of going completely out of existence. He will talk about the hows and whys of writing his historical novel using photographs and the stories that go with them. He will attempt to do so without ruining the plot of the book, in case we haven't already read the book. This gentleman is extremely engaging. So if you're in town, we would love to see another full house like we did tonight. And we will also have things on Zoom for our out-of-town folks. And I think, anything else? Memorial Day weekend. And we do need volunteers. We need a museum manager. So please reach out at curator@monobasinhistory.org. We would love to have more volunteers and a museum manager. And it's just seasonal work. And it's fun because it doesn't pay a lot. And so thank you all very much for coming tonight. And thank you again, David.